Another way to draw is to start with circles and polygons. Now these two are closely related, but let me show you how to draw each and then I'll describe the differences. So we're going to start off with polygons. So I'm going to go ahead and click on these three dots here. Let's go to our additional tools and I'm going to select polygon. Now once I do that, my cursor changes and you'll notice in the bottom right hand corner in my measurements box, I get a number of sides of 6. Now yours may default to something else, but let's just go with 6 here. So all I have to do is just left click and drag. And then I can snap to different axes and I can make this bigger or smaller. Now notice how in the bottom right hand corner in the measurements box we have an inscribed radius. Now that's the actual radius of this polygon. So if I want to, I can let go and leave it alone, or I can type whatever number I want. So I'm going to type in 3 feet and hit enter. And now I have a hexagon that's exactly 3 feet from the center out to that outside point. Now you don't have to draw hexagons, you can really draw any type of polygon you want. So I'm going to reselect that tool. Now here's a little hint, is that the last tool you use shows up at the bottom here, so you don't have to go in here to select it. So now I've reselected that tool, and so now instead of 6 sides, I'm going to type the number 8 and hit enter. Now notice how my cursor changes, and now I'm going to draw an octagon. So let's go ahead and left click and drag that out. And now we can draw really whatever we want. If I reselect this again and say hit the number 3, I can draw a triangle. So the polygon tool is pretty straightforward. You just define the number of sides, and if you want, you can give it an inscribed radius. Now let's go to the circle tool. Now the circle tool works very much the same as the polygon tool, and let me show you. So I'm going to go ahead and select the circle tool, and notice in the bottom right hand corner in the measurements box we have a number of sides of 24. This is exactly what you get with the polygon tool, except for a circle it starts with a larger number of sides, and that will give you a better illusion of a circle. So let's go ahead and go with that, and I'm just going to left click and drag out a circle. Now, if I want to, I can go into this and navigate close to this, and you can see that, yes, it does have straight sides. So it actually has 24 sides. So this is basically a 24-sided polygon. But there will be a difference, and I'll show that to you in just a bit. So let's go ahead and do one more. I'm going to reselect my circle tool. And this time, instead of 24 sides, let's go ahead and do 12. And again, drag it out. And now, if I drag it out big enough, you can kind of see that it does have 12 sides. And because it's a lower number of sides, we can actually see them. Now, when you just draw them as shapes like this, you're really not going to notice too much difference between a polygon and a circle. The difference happens when you extrude these or push-pull these into geometry. So let's go over to our push-pull tool, and I'm going to hover over these polygons, left-click and just drag those up with the push-pull tool. And let's do the same with the ones we started as a circle. And now you can see the differences. The ones that started as a circle have smooth sides, or at least they look smooth. And the ones that started as polygons have lines, and so they have basically faceted sides. And so this basically is the difference. So one is smooth, the other one is not smooth. Now the other difference is that when you select this face on the side, you're actually selecting everything because the edges are hidden. So if I were to go to my push-pull tool and try and push-pull tool, I can't push-pull smooth surfaces. But if I select one of these faces, I can certainly push-pull that. So the circle and the polygon tool work very similarly. The big difference is that one creates geometry with smooth sides, the other creates geometry with hard or faceted sides. Now let's take a look at how to move between both hard and soft edges. So I'm going to start off by drawing a circle. So I'm going to go into my circle tool here, and I have the sides set to 12. So I'm going to just drag that out. And then let's go over to our polygon tool, and I'm going to set my sides again to 12, and then drag that out. So they're about the same size. And then just use my push-pull tool to bring both of these up to about the same height. So again, you'll notice that even though they have the same number of sides, the one that started as a polygon has hard edges, the other one has soft edges. Now, if we want, we can soften some of these edges and turn that polygon into something a little bit more like the cylinder. So all I have to do is left-click on this line and then right-click and select Soften. And that gets rid of it. Do it again. And let's do that one more time. So now you see I have something that looks a little bit more like the cylinder. Now let's say we wanted to go the other way. We wanted to unsoften or harden one of these edges. Well, if I select the cylinder, you'll see it selects everything. And so I have to be able to see those edges that I want to reverse. So we can do that by going into our display panel. And all I have to do is turn on hidden geometry. Now watch what happens. All those ones that we softened and all the ones in that cylinder are now being shown as a dotted line. And that means that that edge has been softened. So all I have to do now is just highlight that edge and again, right-click over it. And instead of soften, we are going to unsoften. And there we go. Select that dotted line edge, unsoften. Select this dotted line edge, and again, select unsoften. So now if I want to, I can go back to my display and turn off hidden geometry. And now you can see that I've got each one is a mix of both. So I can select these discrete faces, but when I just select the ones that are softened, it selects all of those faces. So you can actually move between hard and soft faces, and sometimes you'll want to hide an edge to make some geometry look a little bit smoother, and these tools will help you do that. If you want to soften and smooth a lot of edges, you can use the Soften Smooth panel in SketchUp Free. So let's go ahead and just draw a simple polygon. Now I'm going to draw one with 12 sides like we did the last time. And then I'm going to use the push-pull tool to bring that up into geometry. Now, if I want to, I can, like before, select one of these edges and right-click over it and select Soften. But if I want to do a lot of edges, I can do them all at once, and I'll have a little bit more control over them. So I'm going to go ahead and hold down the Shift key and select a number of these edges. And then I'm going to go over to my panels and select this icon here, which is Soften Smooth. So if I want to soften these edges, all I have to do is click this on, and that will soften those edges. Now, if you do that, you'll still see that these still have a bit of faceting. They're not fully smooth. So I'm going to undo that, and let's reselect these. So I'm going to go ahead and Shift select these, just the edges. And I'm going to soften and smooth, but this time I'm also going to select smooth edges. Now watch what happens. In this case, you're seeing kind of you're seeing the faceting, but as soon as you hit smooth edges, it softens those edges. And then we can set an angle as to when those flip over into fully smoothed edges. And once we do that, now this looks very much like a cylinder, at least on those edges that we created. So you get a little bit more control over softening and smoothing edges by using the Soften Smooth panel. SketchUp Free also allows you to draw shapes as arcs or freehand. So let's take a look at those tools. So again, these are in my additional tools. So I'm going to start off with freehand, which is really easy. So all I do is select freehand, And it gives me something that looks like a line tool, but I can just draw whatever shape I want. Now, once I do that, notice how it does resolve this into individual line segments, but it's a great way to do something a little bit more organic in your scenes. Now, another way to draw is to use what are called arcs. So we have a couple of them. We have arc, 3-point arc, and pie. So I'm going to start off with arc. So I can select a center point, drag out a length, and then select the arc. And so you can define that by number of degrees as well as length, and you can also give it a number of segments. We can do a 3-point arc, and again, we can give it a number of sides here if we want. So for this, all I do is left click, drag out a length, and now that gives me kind of like this Pac-Man shape. And so it's a little bit different way to draw an arc. And then the last one is a pie. Now, pie is actually a piece of geometry. It's very similar to the arc. So again, you give it a number of sides, give it a base length, and then an angle. Now, what it will do is it will fill that in as an arc, and this is geometry. So if I go to my push-pull tool, I can push and pull that up into a little pie wedge or a cheesecake wedge. So those are some other tools that you can use to create shapes and geometry that you can use in your projects. One of my favorite tools in SketchUp is the offset tool, and this allows you to create things such as insets and outlines to existing shapes. So I need an existing shape, so I'm going to go ahead and just use my line tool to draw out a basic shape, and I'm going to do something that's not exactly square, but that is a flat shape. So I have this face here that's irregularly shaped. Now, if I wanted to do something with it, it might be a little difficult because of its shape, but the offset tool is very easy to use. So I'm going to go to my additional tools and find offset. The hotkey for this is the letter F. And just left click on one of the faces, and you can see I can create an offset. So now this has created two faces here. And if I want, I can go not only inside, but outside. So let's go back to our offset tool. And then for this, I can actually go outside of this and create an outline. So now I've got this face, and this face. And so basically it's created either an inset on the inside of the shape or an outline on the outside of the shape. And now these are all faces, and I can use my push-pull tool, hitting the letter P here, to pull that up and do all sorts of stuff with it. So it's very handy. I like using it for creating things such as window frames and stuff like that. So as you can see, it's a very handy tool, and I'm sure you'll find lots of good uses for it. The Follow Me tool is a great way to create geometry that runs along the path, and you can use it to create new geometry or subtract from existing geometry. So let's take a look at how to use that. So the first thing I need is a path. So I'm just going to create an arc. I'm going to go to my additional tools, find the basic arc tool, left click and drag along red, left click, and then sweep that over to the green to get a quarter circle. And now I'm going to draw a circle that's perpendicular to this first point. So again, I'm going to select my circle tool, snap to that point, and then hit the right arrow to snap it to green, and then just drag that out however big I want. So now I have a shape that's snapped to the end of this line. So now we can use our Follow Me tool. So this is a little tricky to use, but let's go ahead and give it a try. So I'm going to select my Follow Me tool, So I need to highlight this face and then drag it along the path. But it really helps if I click very close to that intersection. So I'm going to go ahead and get as close to that center as possible, and then left click and drag and get it. So you can see it took me a couple of tries, and it's a little tricky to use sometimes, but I find it helps if I click towards that center. So now I have this circle that's been swept along the arc, and I have a little piece of macaroni. So now let's go ahead and do something else, and we'll use the push-pull tool to create a bevel. So I'm going to go to my rectangle tool and just basically draw a box. So I'm going to draw this box here and then use push-pull to pull that up into a full box. Now let's say I wanted to round off this corner here. Well, I can do that by drawing a shape and then using push-pull. So I'm going to use my arc tool. In this case, I'm going to use my 2-point arc. And that basically just draws between 2 points. So I'm going to snap to this edge, left click and drag, snap to this edge, and then once I get tangent to edge, you'll know that this is a perfect semicircle. So now once I have tangent to edge, you can see I have a nice shape here that I can extrude. So I'm going to go back to my Follow Me tool and then click on that. And once I click, it already knows that that path is there, and it automatically just bevels that. So that's a very fast way to round off corners or create bevels. So the Follow Me tool can be very handy. Sometimes it's a little tricky to use, but go ahead and practice, and you should get the hang of it. SketchUp Free also allows you to create 3D text. So this tool is actually very straightforward, and we can find it in our additional tools. We have 3D text, and it brings up a box, and we can type in whatever text we want. We can choose one of several fonts. You cannot choose your own font, so you have to go with what they provide. And then we can do things such as regular or bold. We can give it an actual height, as well as whether it's filled, as well as whether or not it is extruded. So let's go ahead and click OK. And it allows you to place that wherever you want. And there's our text. Now this comes in as what's called a group. Now I'll get to this in a little bit, but if you see a box like this around an object or a group of objects, you can always double click on it, and then it creates a kind of a shadow box around that, and you can actually get to the actual geometry. Now there are other ways to use this text tool, so let's go ahead back to it. And let's do text again. Let's maybe do a different font. In this case, let's make it maybe a little bit higher, say 2 feet instead of 1 foot. And let's not fill it, and let's not extrude it. And if you click OK, it now just creates outlines. And so you can use those outlines however you want as well. So again, they come in as a group, so you can double click on those to get to the actual lines. So the text tool is pretty basic, but it does give you a nice starting point with which to create objects.